Hello, welcome to the single session blog where we get to talk about all things single session. It's super cool. I'm coming to you today from the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe on the shores of Lake Ontario here in Ontario, Canada. So grateful to be here. So thankful that you're taking time out of your day to even watch this video. It's amazing to me. The thing that I want to talk about today, we're going to actually get into sort of the nitty gritty a little bit more about what we are actually doing in these sessions as clinicians. So one of the ideas that I want to throw out there that I think really is both different but key to being effective in single session is the idea of listening through problems. So I think I've said before, what we're trying to do in single session is not solve problems. What we're trying to do is increase capacity. Now, what we are really trying to do, if we get right down to it, is we are trying to invite clients to be able to talk about themselves differently. What we really want is for our clients to describe themselves, their experiences, their abilities, their futures, from a place of capacity instead of from a place of deficit. How do we do that, you might be asking? Since most of the way that we are trained is so deficit-based, we are fully taught to believe that the way to establish empathy, the way to get people to move, or the way that change happens is somehow by exploring the problem. In single session therapy, I would argue that we don't have time for that because it brings people down instead of up. And when we only have one meeting, we need to be able to do things differently. So you might be asking, how in the world do I get people to talk about themselves from a place of capacity? And the way that it starts, step number one, is we as clinicians have to see our clients from a place of capacity. We have to believe that people have the ability to be able to make choices for themselves that are good for them, and that it is actually not our place to tell people what to do. This begins by how we listen. So what will often happen in therapy is we have major problem stories that show up usually at the beginning of session. In my own clinical practice, I work primarily with women and women who have experienced a lot of trauma. So I have one client in particular that comes to mind. She knows that I'm going to talk about her. I've changed some details, so confidentiality is present. It's not exactly her, but she knows anyways. One of my clients is a young woman. She's in her early 30s, I would say. She's experienced really significant trauma, like very, very abusive relationship, really lots of difficulties and lots of things. So I saw her for the first time not that long ago, and she came in and she talked about herself being like a hot mess all the time. Like there are days that she can't get out of bed. There are times when she can't drive. She can't get in the car to drive to work. She's really struggling with this. She's debilitated in a lot of ways by the problem that has happened to her. Now, that's one version of my client. The other version of my client that I start asking about is the version that goes to work at all. It's the version that while she was actually in an abusive relationship, obtained not 1, but 2 degrees in a very STEM-based, male-dominated field. So I can ask my client questions about how come she's a hot mess, or what's it like to not get out of bed, or I can ask her questions about how, in the course of all of that stuff that was going on, she managed to get these 2 degrees, which eventually led her to have the financial autonomy and freedom to be able to leave this relationship. Both things are true about an individual. They can both be in a state of hot mess and be in a state of extraordinary capacity. Both exist simultaneously. In single session therapy, what we're trying to do is be a little bit more choosy about the story that we are hearing. We are trying to draw forward, we are trying to encourage our clients to describe themselves from a position of capacity and resources, so that when they leave our session, they leave feeling better than when they came in. and more able to cope with the very, very difficult work associated with moving through things like trauma, abuse, depression, or any other significant mental illness. I hope this is clear for you. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. I will see you in 2 weeks.